Welcome back, everybody. The moment you've all been waiting for has finally arrived. Oh, yes, it's season 2 of KPS Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Steve.
And I'm your co-host, Kayla.
And we're back to bring you all of Keystone's paranormal legends. Stories of treachery and deceit. Tales of ghosts and flighted dreams. All this and so much more in season 2 of KPS Stories. So you won't want to go anywhere.
So as per usual, we have a caller on our line. Our caller is Ethan Heller. How you doing today, Ethan?
So I've heard stories about cryptids. Can you tell me about that? Like what are cryptids?
That's a great question, Ethan. So, to everybody listening at home, a cryptid is an undiscovered animal. It's a creature that's disputed by science. You think of things like Bigfoot, the Mothman, the Loch Ness Monster. These are popular cryptids from around the world that have had some measure of success either in B movies or pseudo documentaries on the History Channel. Well, might be a little bit of a surprise to know that there are actually some cryptids at Keystone. Now, I just want to preface this by saying I can't confirm or deny the reality of a lot of these things. I'm just telling you what I heard. And there are a lot of problems that these stories present, but we're not here to talk about those. That could be another episode. So the most famous Keystone cryptid is without a doubt Scuba Steve.
But is he really a cryptid if he's proven to be real? Is Scuba
Steve
real?
Nobody really knows. Nobody knows his real name.
No. I'm assuming Steve.
I wouldn't count on it.
Okay, fair enough.
It's something that goes back to ancient lore that if you know something's true name, you have power over it. Nobody knows Scuba's true name. It's a nickname he gave himself. And I've seen him many times. I've interacted with him. And when he found out my name was Steve, we were friends instantly. And this is back when I worked in campus safety, so I would get calls from concerned students, concerned staffers, concerned faculty that there was this guy wandering around on campus. Nobody knew who he was. Or they did know who he was. They just said, Scuba Steve is back. And when I first started in that job, I didn't know what it all meant. I was puzzled. So I just went down to my coworkers, and there he was. It was Scuba Steve. He's a middle-aged man. He's a little bigger. He always wears a baseball cap and a backpack. And when you approach him, he always goes through a series of catchphrases that he says. And it always starts with, "I'm Scuba Steve." Just like that. Even if you had just said hi to him 30 seconds ago, he reminds you that he's Scuba Steve. Then he'll say, "You want a beer?" as he'll point to the backpack. And I don't know what happens if you tell him yes, but I know when you tell him no, he also points to the backpack and says, "I got weed." And according to him, he went to Keystone back when it was the number 3 ranked party school in all of Pennsylvania. And he would tell stories of crazy Keystone ragers of yesteryear. Now, to the listeners at home, Keystone's been a dry campus for decades.
Quote unquote.
We don't have parties or alcohol or drugs here anymore. So that's how you know Scuba's from another time, another place, another dimension, perhaps. And he just kind of stumbles around and says weird stuff and waves his arms around. Nobody really knows the truth about him. But it's like a rite of passage to come to Keystone and encounter Scuba. I know a lot of commuters go their whole time here and don't see him because he only really shows up when there's the smell of food in the air. Student activities used to do a luau for the seniors, and as soon as they started cooking, Scuba would show up, and he'd come. He'd get like hot dogs and stuff. He'd shamble around, and then he'd go home. Well, one time when I was, just a campus safety officer, I wanted to get to the bottom of this. I wanted to know who Scuba was. So I got the golf cart and I went around campus trying to find him. I had followed posts on social media indicating that he was in the area, and I went on a search for him. And I went up to the track, but Scuba wasn't there. But there were some hikers up there, and they said that they had seen him heading down toward town. So I went back down, and there he was, silhouetted against the horizon. So I drove up to him and started talking to him. And I asked him, like, what are you doing here? Why do they call you Scuba Steve? And he told me that when he was 12 years old, he came to a party at Keystone. And somebody offered him $50 if he shotgunned a 6-pack of beer through a snorkel. And he did. And he got the nickname Scuba Steve from that. And then he was talking about delivering newspapers to the dean in the 70s. And then he just kind of wandered away, as he always would. But people are afraid of this guy. People have a bad opinion of Scuba. They think he's trying to sell drugs, or he has malicious intents with students. I don't think any of that's true. I think he's just a lost soul in a lot of ways. I think he's just lonely and longing for a Keystone that's been gone for a long time. So if you see him out there, give him the time of day. Say hello to him.
Buy some weed from him.
Well, I don't know about that, Kayla. We can't condone that.
Say yes to the beer. See what happens.
But it's a dry campus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, the long and the short of it is, you'll see Scuba Steve on campus if you're on the back trails, if you're down by the creek. He likes to go swimming down there. You'll see him. Now there's another Keystone Cryptid. Now this one has fallen into memory, but I do have photographs of its existence. And it was the Keystone White Doe. She was an all-white deer. And she would run around campus with all of her friends, the other deer. And this is going back a few years, so I know she's not with us anymore. But if she's out there listening right now, I haven't forgotten. And seeing this albino deer was one of the other things that really made you a Keystone giant in the early to mid 2010s. So I'll never forget one time when one of my coworkers was brand new at the job. We were touring the campus and we saw the deer maybe 20 yards in front of us just eating grass in the yard of the pink farmhouse. And we took pictures of it. And it was like some kind of Bigfoot documentary shit where we were seeing this deer plain as day, but when we took the pictures, they were very blurry. Maybe that's because we just had bad phones. But maybe she had some kind of magical power. I don't know. And after that, there was another white deer. Now, this is more recent. This is a year or two ago. This was just a piebald deer. So it was like partially white and partially a normal deer. It's like splotchy looking. And it was baby. It was a little one. And unfortunately, she was seen dead on the highway after just a few short months of being around the campus. So I don't know whether there are still any white deer around or if those were the only ones of their kind. But it was magical to see them. It was always some kind of experience. It was very cool. And then I'll move on to the third, Keystone Cryptid, I guess, that I've seen myself. And then I could tell you some of the others that there are stories of that probably aren't real. But that's neither here nor there, I guess. So there's the story of the lady in white. And this is a story that Scuba Steve himself actually told me one time. He told me that he was up on the train platform up on back campus, and that while he was there, he saw them. And I'm looking at him puzzled. He said it was a lady in red, a lady in white, and their 2 kids.
Well, for starters, you weren't even aware that there was a train platform on back campus, right?
No, I didn't think it was real. I thought he was making it up.
It's just a trail back there, so go on.
So he says there's the lady in red and the lady in white and their 2 kids and they're bouncing a ball. And he said that phrase like 6 times in a 2-minute span. Because he tends to repeat himself. And he was saying all these stories about this lady in white. I'm thinking, okay, whatever. Needless to say, I got curious after a little bit, and I went hiking on the trail. I didn't see anything. So then I just stopped, and I looked, and I saw there was a big concrete structure that was mostly covered up by leaves. And they actually put a smoking gazebo up there now. It used to be between Moffett and Commons. If any of our Keystone alumni are listening, they'll remember those days. They took the butt hut away and dragged it up into the woods. I guess so people would smoke less? I don't know. So there was the train platform up there, and it was very real. And I began to believe some of what Scuba had taught me. I began to wonder whether it was all true. There was another night where I was hanging around with some friends, some people, some students. And they were telling Keystone ghost stories, as everybody does. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing right now. And the one guy had mentioned that he was smoking a cigarette late one night over by the campus center. The Hibbard butt hut, if you like that term, by the volleyball court. And he was watching as he saw this girl in a white dress walking toward Hibbard, going through those pine trees. But then she never came out of the pine trees. And he rubbed his eyes and he went looking, but there was nobody there. And he just figured, oh, it's 2:30 in the morning. I'm just tired. I'm going to go to sleep. He didn't think too much of it. So then it happened that one night I was locking down the Brooks Theater with my coworker DJ, who I'm hopeful to have on the show in the coming episodes. We were going down to Brooks to lock the building, and the same young man who had seen the lady in white before was there. And he said to DJ, hey, could I bum a cigarette off of you? Because that's kind of what their friendship was based around. So Dave says, sure, why not? So they're getting ready to walk outside to smoke a cigarette. And I was like, oh, I'll stand out there with you guys. Like, we'll hang out and chat for a couple minutes. And as we're walking toward the door, we all see just a long white streak go by. Like, clearly in the shape of a person. It was this lady in white. And we all watched it happen. We all just froze where we were, a couple feet away from it. And we're looking at each other in disbelief. Then we open the door, and there's nothing there. There's just no one. And we're looking all the way up into Capwell Grove, and it's like, we just saw a person walk past, and now there's nothing here whatsoever. So we were all kind of psyched out at the time. Like, they were shaking as they were standing there trying to light cigarettes. And they would tell me later on that, oh, we were just tired. We were just imagining it, whatever. But we all know exactly what we saw there. And it just made me think that, once again, maybe Scuba is actually telling the truth some of these times. And the thing about a character like a Scuba Steve is that he's lived here for so long. It's his whole life. Keystone is his life. That's kind of a scary thought when you say it out loud. But he has no reason to make stuff up, I guess. I very much believe him now after having those couple of experiences.
Hey, maybe we'll have him on.
Yeah, I don't know about that. He's been banned from campus like 8 times.
We're doing the podcast remotely featuring Scuba Steve next episode. Prepare yourselves.
There we go. That sounds good.
Just don't hold your breath. Maybe another couple episodes.
So then we get to the more dicey Keystone Cryptids. The most famous one is the back campus Wendigo. Now, Kayla, have you ever heard of a Wendigo?
Yeah, specifically from the show Supernatural. What it is, can you brief me on that a little bit? Don't
Yeah.
remember so much.
So the basic understanding of it is that in First Nations mythology, there is a Wendigo. It's essentially a wicked being that's created by people doing stuff they're not supposed to do. Most commonly by consuming human flesh during a hard winter. And it's this evil spirit that possesses the person and becomes the person, basically. They turn into a monster. And, in a literary sense, that it makes sense. When you do bad things, you kind of become that after a while. But it's been adapted into a lot of movies and TV shows, like you said, where it's not really that anymore.
It's a monster.
Yeah, it's described as like a deer kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know a movie just came out called Antlers that's about a Wendigo.
Ooh, interesting.
And it's like, it has a deer skull for a face, and it's very tall, and it has like a human body that's all twisted and rotted away and stuff, and it tries to hunt you and kill you when you go into its territory. There have been legends and rumors of a Keystone Wendigo over the years, of people seeing eyes high up in the sky that aren't supposed to be there, of people seeing just large creatures moving around there after dark. There's rumors of this that have persisted throughout the years. And there are rumors of other similar creatures, around. Remember, one time we got a call in campus safety of someone who said, "We're seeing Bigfoot up by the track." And we just ignored it, We didn't really get prank calls, but we just ignored it, whatever. So they called back a couple minutes later, and they're like, "Oh, Bigfoot's up here. You guys got to get back here. It's 7 feet tall." Like all the generic stuff you see in every Bigfoot show ever. So we just laughed it off, whatever. Like, we all know there wasn't Sasquatch at the Keystone track. We would have had it on the cameras.
I mean, that's the whole point of a cryptid, though, right? Is that they are not to be caught.
Yes, they're very elusive.
Yeah, so don't doubt what those people said.
And one of the really mysterious things of cryptids, and especially Bigfoot, is that every time evidence surfaces, it mysteriously disappears.
All right, and that's your limit on saying the word Bigfoot.
Okay. So when you're dealing with upright, hairy hominid evidence, it tends to be a thing until it's about to be examined by a professional, and then it mysteriously vanishes. Or the government took it, some variation like that. It just didn't exist, I think most of the time. So there's so many Keystone stories of ghosts and shadow people, and the shadow people are another topic entirely that have evoked a lot of fear from a lot of people, myself included, where you're in a place at night and you just see a shadowy figure. I don't know. It just looks like a person, except it's a thick black shadow. And it doesn't have any features. It doesn't have any mouth or nose or anything. But it usually has eyes that you can see looking at you. And when it moves, it looks like a person. But it's not a person, if that makes sense. It's almost like it's trying to look like a person and doing a bad job.
Yeah, I've definitely heard a lot about that, about like the tall man with the hat, black shadows. It's a lot to do with like sleep paralysis as well, but it is definitely a little different when you see it when you're awake.
Yes, it's a very different kind of thing. And people have reported seeing that on the back campus as well. And that's one that I 100% believe is there. I haven't seen that here at Keystone, but I've seen it in other places, and it seems like the kind of thing that attaches to a person. I don't think it's specific to a place. Like a lot of these cryptids, any kind of large hunting animal it needs more than 270 acres of finely polished campus trails to sustain itself. There's not enough wildlife unless it's eating students. But we wouldn't let that happen, obviously. So to kind of wrap this up, what I would say is if you've seen a Keystone Cryptid, give us a call. Check us out on social media. Come on the show. We're looking for your experiences this semester, everybody.
Yeah, if you want to contact us, just go on any of the KPS social media pages and send a message, whether it be Instagram or Facebook. We really want to hear your stories. We want to put them out there. Even if you don't want to put them on air, just let us know what's going on. You don't even have to be a voice. You know what I mean?
We can keep you totally anonymous.
Yeah. So come find us. Let us know. Follow the social media pages. We're going to see you next week with probably some guests, maybe some more cryptid talk, maybe some unrelated to Keystone Cryptid talk, or maybe some Keystone stories. You will have to tune in to find out. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.
Have a safe night, everybody.
Bye-bye.